They say money can't buy happiness, but it can certainly buy revenge. And as I sat at the far end of that mahogany table, watching my brother toast to his success with champagne I technically paid for, I realized that sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply letting the truth speak for itself. My name is Alara Vance, and for the past 3 years, I've been living a double life. To my family, I'm the disappointing daughter who works at a warehouse in Newark, barely scraping by. To a select few who know the truth, I'm the founder of SV Capital Holdings, managing a portfolio worth $80 million. The evening started like every other family gathering. Mom had chosen the Capitol Grill in downtown Chicago for her birthday dinner. The private dining room glowed with warm lighting and expensive floral arrangements. My father sat at the head of the table in his tailored suit, Mom beside him in pearls, and my brother Jackson held court in the center, his wife Melanie hanging on his every word. My younger sister Chloe was scrolling through her phone, probably live tweeting the whole affair. I had dressed simply in a navy blouse and black slacks from Target. Not because I couldn't afford better, but because anything more would have raised questions I wasn't ready to answer. I'd learned that the less attention I drew to myself, the easier these gatherings became. Jackson was recounting the story of Next Gen Solutions' Series B funding round. $15 million, he announced proudly. Everyone leaned in, appropriately impressed. Dad clapped him on the shoulder. Mom dabbed at her eyes, overcome with maternal pride. I pushed my water glass around the table and tried to remember why I kept showing up to these things. When the waiter came by, I ordered an espresso. I'd been up since 4 that morning reviewing quarterly reports from 3 different portfolio companies, and I needed the caffeine. That's when Jackson turned his attention to me for the first time all evening. His smile had that sharp edge to it. "Do you even have enough money for coffee here, Alara?" he said loudly. "What's that warehouse job paying you these days? 9, 10 bucks an hour?" Melanie giggled into her wine glass. Chloe smirked. Mom and Dad exchanged one of those looks that said they found the whole thing mildly amusing but not worth intervening over. I felt my fingers tighten around the water glass. But I didn't say anything. I'd learned that lesson years ago. Defending myself only gave them more ammunition. Instead, I pulled out my phone. A new message had just come through from Richard Chin, my attorney. Next Gen transaction complete. 60% equity stake transferred. Awaiting further instructions. End go. I felt something shift in my chest. I glanced up at Jackson, who was explaining his expansion plans to Dad. He had no idea. None of them did. I lifted my water glass in a silent toast to myself and allowed the smallest smile to cross my face. The next morning, I woke up in my studio apartment in Jersey City. It was deliberately modest, with IKEA furniture and Target art. My actual home, a penthouse in Tribeca that I'd purchased under an LLC, sat empty most of the time. This place was my cover, the physical manifestation of the life everyone expected me to be living. The warehouse job was real enough. I'd taken it specifically because it was the kind of work my family would believe I'd end up doing. What they didn't know was that I'd negotiated a flexible schedule that allowed me to manage my investments during off hours. At 1:45, I clocked out and changed in the employee bathroom into a tailored blazer and designer pants. I transformed from warehouse worker to venture capitalist in 15 minutes. Richard's office occupied the entire 50th floor of a glass tower in Midtown. His receptionist greeted me with warm professionalism. Richard met me in the conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a walnut table. "I have the final documents from the Next Gen transaction," he said, sliding a leather portfolio across the table. Inside were papers confirming I now owned 60% of my brother's company through a series of shell companies. SV Capital Holdings had pumped over $4 million into Next Gen Solutions over 18 months, keeping it afloat when traditional venture capital had been reluctant to commit. Jackson thought his mysterious benefactor was some shadowy Delaware investment firm. He had no idea he'd been pitching his own sister. "Walk me through the structure one more time," I said. Richard pulled up a flowchart. SV Capital Holdings owns 60% of Next Gen Solutions. It's wholly owned by Sterling Ventures LLC, registered in Delaware, which is owned by a trust in your name. The paper trail is completely legal and airtight, but it would take weeks to trace it back to you personally. This was my grandmother's legacy, transformed beyond anything she could have imagined. Gran had left me $2 million when she died. The family had written it off as a consolation prize, assuming I'd blow through it quickly. What they didn't know was that I'd turned it into something extraordinary. I'd studied the market obsessively, made careful investments, and been right more often than not. My portfolio had grown steadily, eventually exploding as key investments hit big. When Jackson had been pitching every VC firm in Manhattan for seed funding, getting rejected because his business plan had holes, I'd heard about it through my network. I'd reviewed his pitch deck and seen something that surprised me: potential. The idea behind Next Gen Solutions was solid. He wanted to build a platform that helped mid-sized companies optimize their supply chains using AI and machine learning. Despite my brother's many personal failings, he had a decent instinct for technology trends, so I'd funded him. Not as his sister, but through the maze of corporate structures Richard had built. I'd provided strategic guidance when asked and watched Jackson take credit for every success, never knowing his supposedly unsuccessful sister had been his safety net all along. "Why did you do it?" Richard asked. "Because I wanted to know if he could do it. If success would change him, make him someone I could respect." "And has it?" I thought about the previous night, the casual cruelty in Jackson's voice. No, it's made him worse. Over the next few weeks, Jackson's behavior reached new heights. He posted on social media about his success with inspirational captions about hustle culture. He bought a Tesla and made sure everyone knew. He and Melanie put an offer on a house in Lincoln Park, and he couldn't help rubbing it in my face. He'd text me screenshots of articles about NextGen, always with "look what hard work can do." He'd offer career advice, suggesting I try community college or retail management. He'd invite me to dinner and make a show of paying for my meal loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Mom called asking if I'd seen Jackson's interview in Crane's Chicago business. Chloe asked for money, as she did every few months. Dad forwarded me a job listing for an assistant manager position at FedEx. I archived the email and poured myself bourbon from the bottle I kept hidden in my real apartment. Standing at the windows of my Tribeca penthouse, I wondered how much longer I could keep this up. 3 weeks later came another family dinner at Mom and Dad's house in Evanston. It was supposed to be casual, but Jackson had turned it into another celebration of himself, bringing champagne. We gathered in the dining room filled with family photos. Jackson started talking about next-gen solutions again, about new hires from Google and Amazon, about the Series C round he was planning with a valuation north of $100 million. Then he turned to me. "You know, Alara, it's never too late to make something of yourself. You're only 32. Plenty of people don't find their path until their 30s or even 40s. I cut a piece of roast beef and said nothing. "I'm serious. You could go back to school, get a degree in something practical, business administration, maybe. Then you could work your way up in a real company, not just—" He waved his hand dismissively. "Whatever it is you're doing now." "She's working at a warehouse," Chloe supplied. "Right, and that's fine for now, I guess. But don't you want more? Don't you want to make Mom and Dad proud?" Something cold settled in my chest. I set down my fork and looked at my brother, really looked at him. He wasn't just thoughtless. He was cruel. He derived genuine pleasure from putting me down. And he had no idea that every achievement he was crowing about had been built on a foundation I'd provided. "Jackson," I said quietly. He didn't hear me, already talking to Dad about some potential partnership. "Jackson," I said again, louder. He looked at me with barely concealed impatience. "What?" I stood up. "I need to make a phone call." I walked onto the back deck and called Richard Chin. He answered immediately. "Alara, everything okay?" "No. I want to divest from NextGen Solutions, all of it. I want out." There was a long pause. "Are you sure? If you pull out quickly, it could destabilize the entire company." "I know. Jackson will have 30 days to buy back your shares or find replacement funding. If he can't—" "I know. I want you to make it official. Tomorrow morning. Formal notice to the board." "And you want him to know that it was you?" I looked back through the kitchen window at my family, laughing at something Jackson had said. "Eventually. But not immediately. I want him to feel it first. And then, when he's desperate enough, that's when I want you to tell him." "That's comprehensive. I've had a long time to think about this." The next morning, I signed the paperwork. The documents gave NextGen Solutions 30 days to buy back SV Capital's 60% stake at fair market value, approximately $48 million, or find equivalent replacement funding. If they couldn't, SV Capital had the right to force a sale or liquidation. The first call came 3 days later. I was at work when my phone buzzed. Jackson's name flashed on the screen. "Alara," his voice was panicked. "Have you heard? My main investor is pulling out. SV Capital wants all their money back in 30 days. $48 million. If I can't pay them, they're going to force a sale of the company." "Oh no," I said with just enough concern to sound believable. "That's terrible. What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I'm trying to reach their representatives, but they won't take my calls. This is catastrophic." "Maybe you could get a loan? Or find new investors?" "In 30 days? This is catastrophic." I made sympathetic noises. "Can't you help?" he asked desperately. "How would I help, Jackson? You've spent the last 3 years reminding me that I barely make enough money to afford coffee." The silence was profound. "I'm sorry. I was just joking, you know that, right? Didn't you?" He ended the call without saying goodbye. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Jackson's world crumble. TechCrunch ran a piece titled, "Trouble in Paradise. NextGen Solutions Faces Major Funding Crisis." Other outlets followed. The company's estimated valuation dropped by 30% in a week. Other investors started getting nervous. Mom called me crying. "Did you hear about Jackson? He's going to lose everything." "It's terrible," I agreed. "We're having a family meeting this Sunday. Everyone needs to be there. We have to figure out how to help him." Sunday arrived cold and gray. I let myself into my parents' house to find everyone already there. Jackson sat on the couch looking terrible, hair uncombed, eyes red-rimmed. Melanie sat beside him looking exhausted. Mom and Dad occupied the armchairs, and Chloe was on the ottoman. "Alara," Mom said. "Thank goodness. Sit down." I took the corner chair, my usual spot. "Jackson's company is in trouble," Dad said. "Serious trouble. His main investor is pulling out, demanding $48 million, and he has less than 2 weeks left. I've talked to every VC firm in Chicago, New York, and San Francisco," Jackson said hoarsely. "No one will touch it. 3 weeks ago I was a genius. Now I can't get anyone to return my calls." Mom was crying. "We have some savings, maybe 200,000. "It's not even a down payment," Jackson said. The room fell silent. Finally, Dad turned to me. "Alara, is there anything you can do?" "Actually," I said, standing up, "I do have something I can do. Excuse me." I walked into the kitchen and called Richard. "Send the offer. Buy back at $2.3 million for the complete equity stake. And Richard, include my name. All of it. I want them to know exactly who they're dealing with." I returned to the living room and sat down. Everyone looked at me expectantly. Jackson's phone buzzed. He ignored it at first, but it buzzed again, then a third time. With an irritated sigh, he pulled it out. His face went white. "What is it?" Melanie asked. Jackson was reading, his expressions cycling through confusion, disbelief, horror, and humiliation. His hand started shaking. "Jackson?" Dad's voice was sharp. My brother looked up at me, just at me. "SV Capital Holdings, Sterling Ventures, Alara Vance. It's you?" The room erupted. Everyone started talking at once, but I only had eyes for Jackson. "It's you," he said. "It's been you the whole time." I stood slowly. "Yes, it's been me the whole time." "I don't understand," Mom said. "What is he talking about?" "SV Capital Holdings is my investment firm," I said. "I manage a portfolio worth approximately $80 million. I've been doing it for 3 years, since grandmother left me her inheritance. One of my investments was Next Gen Solutions. I own 60% of Jackson's company. Or I did, until I decided to divest." The silence was absolute. "You're lying," Chloe said. "You work at a warehouse." "I work at a warehouse because I wanted to, because it was useful cover, and I can afford coffee just fine, Chloe. I own a penthouse in Tribeca, 3,000 square feet. I paid cash for it." Mom gasped. "Why would you lie to us? When's the last time you asked about my life? When's the last time any of you treated me like I mattered?" "We love you," Mom said, tears streaming. "You loved the version of me you wanted me to be, but you never saw the version I actually am." Jackson was staring at his phone. "You funded my company, every round. You were the anonymous investor who saved us." "Yes. Why? Why did you do it if you were just going to destroy it?" I sat back down. "Because I wanted to believe in you. When you first started Next Gen, the idea was good, and I thought maybe if you succeeded, you'd become someone I could respect. Someone who understood that success isn't about putting other people down." "But I didn't," Jackson said. "No, you got worse. Every success made you more arrogant, more cruel. You used your success as a weapon to hurt me. Success didn't humble you. It just gave you a bigger platform to be terrible from." "The dinner at the Capitol Grill," Melanie said quietly. "That was the beginning. But the final straw was 2 weeks ago, when Jackson told me I should be happy with my simple life because not everyone was meant to do great things. When he put money on the table like I was a charity case." "I was joking," Jackson said weakly. "You weren't. You believed every word. You genuinely thought you were better than me, that your success was earned and mine was impossible." Dad cleared his throat. "So what happens now? Are you going to let the company collapse? You think this is about revenge?" I looked at him. "This is about accountability, about consequences, about Jackson learning that you can't build something lasting on arrogance and cruelty." I pulled out my phone. "Richard has sent you a proposal. $2.3 million for my complete equity stake. It's 25% of fair market value, but given the circumstances, it's generous." "I don't have $2 million, Jackson said. "Then find it. You have 12 days. Sell your Tesla, max out your credit cards, ask Mom and Dad to liquidate their retirement. Work as hard as you've been telling me I should work. And if I can't, I walked to the door. Then you'll learn what it feels like to lose everything. And maybe you'll learn something from it." "Alara, wait," Mom called. "We're a family." I paused. "When you're ready to treat me like family, with respect and love and basic human decency, then call me. Until then, we need space." I walked out and didn't look back. The next 12 days were chaos. I heard through business connections that Jackson was trying everything. He'd listed his Tesla for sale, canceled the house purchase, gone back to every investor begging for emergency funding. But I also heard something unexpected. He was being honest. He was telling investors he'd messed up, that success had gone to his head, that he'd mistreated people who'd helped him. Some people said it seemed genuine. On day 9, Richard called. He's got $1.8 million from personal assets, family contributions, and a small angel investor group. He's asking if you'll take it. Tell him I'll take $1.5 million. And I want one more thing. I want a public acknowledgement. I want him to tell the truth about where his funding came from and what he did to lose that support. On the record. That's going to be humiliating. Good. If he wants to rebuild, he needs to start with the truth. Jackson agreed. 2 days later, Next Gen Solutions published a blog post titled, "A Lesson in Humility, How I Almost Lost Everything." I read it in my Tribeca penthouse with expensive Italian espresso. The post was long, detailed, and genuinely emotional. Jackson wrote about starting Next Gen, about the struggles of finding funding, about the mysterious investor who'd believed in him. He wrote about how success had changed him, made him arrogant and cruel. He named specific instances where he'd treated people poorly, including stories about me. Then he revealed the truth, that the mysterious investor had been his sister all along. That I'd funded 60% of his company while working a warehouse job. Not because I had to, but because I'd wanted to see if he could handle success. That he'd failed that test spectacularly. The post ended with an apology to everyone he'd hurt along the way. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The post went viral, getting picked up by major tech news sites. TechCrunch ran a follow-up article. The Wall Street Journal tried to profile me, but I refused to comment. Forbes reached out about SV Capital Holdings. I ignored most press requests. This wasn't about becoming famous. It was about setting the record straight. 3 days later, Richard called. Jackson had secured the funding. The angel investor group had been so impressed by his public accountability that they'd increased their commitment to $1.5 million. The deal was done. I was officially out of Next Gen Solutions. "How do you feel?" Richard asked. "Lighter," I said. 3 weeks later, I agreed to meet my family at a quiet Italian restaurant in the West Village. They were all there, standing awkwardly when I arrived. After we ordered drinks, Dad cleared his throat. "We owe you an apology, all of us, for years of treating you like you were less than, like you didn't matter." "We're so sorry," Mom added. "We failed you as parents." Jackson met my eyes. "I was terrible to you, not just at those dinners, but for years. I used you as a punching bag to make myself feel better. Except I wasn't more successful. You were building an empire while I was building a company on your money." The apologies were good to hear, but they didn't erase years of pain. "I appreciate the apologies," I said carefully. "But I need to know that things will actually be different going forward." Mom pulled out a folded paper. We wrote down some commitments. Things were going to change. I read it. Regular family dinners where everyone got equal attention. No more comparisons. Active interest in each person's life. Respect for boundaries. Support without conditions. "This is good," I said. "But it's going to take time." "We know," Jackson said. "We're just asking for a chance to prove we can do better." "Okay, we can try, but I need some things too. Complete honesty. Respect for my choices. And boundaries. Chloe, no more asking for money without a real conversation." "Fair enough," Chloe said, embarrassed. "Also," I continued, looking at Jackson, "I want to be involved in Next Gen going forward, not as an investor, but as an advisor." "I'd like that," Jackson nodded. "Your insights during board meetings were always the most valuable." The conversation shifted to safer topics. It was superficial but comfortable. The deep reconciliation would take time. For tonight, we could just be people sharing a meal. As dinner progressed, I found myself relaxing. Jackson asked genuine questions about my investment strategy. Dad wanted to know about the warehouse work. Mom inquired about my Tribeca apartment with real interest. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments. But everyone caught themselves, course-corrected, tried again. Over dessert, Jackson asked if I'd review his pitch deck for a potential Fortune 500 client. "Send it over," I said. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. For believing in me even when I didn't deserve it. For teaching me the hardest lesson, and for not completely giving up on me. You're my brother." I was angry, and I wanted you to understand what you'd done, but I never wanted to destroy you. I just wanted you to be better. "I'm trying to be. I know." The evening ended with tentative hugs and promises to do this again soon. I took the subway back to Tribeca and walked the last few blocks. When I got home, I made coffee and sat by the window looking out at the city. My city, the place I'd built a life and a fortune while everyone assumed I was failing. My phone buzzed with messages in the family group chat. Photos, thank yous, hearts. Mom texted separately. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Not because of the money, but because of who you are." 3 months later, Next Gen Solutions announced its Series C funding round, led by a prestigious Silicon Valley firm. Jackson did the interview circuit, and in every interview, he mentioned me. not as a footnote, but as a central part of the story. I started getting speaking invitations. I turned most down but accepted a few meaningful ones. At NYU's Stern School of Business, a young woman approached me afterward. "Miss Vance, I just wanted to thank you. I'm working 2 jobs to pay for school, and my family doesn't understand. Your story gave me hope." "What's your name?" "Sarah." "Sarah, the only person who needs to believe in your path is you. Everyone else's opinion is just noise. Do the work, trust yourself, and don't let anyone else's definition of success limit what you think is possible." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." As she walked away, I felt something shift. My wealth wasn't just about financial security or proving something. It was about having the power to lift other people up. The following month, I launched the Sterling Foundation, providing seed funding and mentorship to entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds. Mom cried when I told her. "Your grandmother would be so proud. This is exactly what she hoped you'd do with her gift." "Did she tell you that?" "She said she was leaving you the money because you were the only one who would use it to make a difference. She said you had a good heart and a sharp mind, and that combination was rare." A year after the restaurant confrontation, we had another family dinner at my penthouse, the first time I'd invited everyone to see my real home. They arrived together, taking in the space with wide eyes. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the original art, the expensive furniture. It was everything they'd refused to believe about me. Dinner was relaxed and genuine. We talked about NextGen's latest product launch, about Chloe's new job at a marketing firm, about Mom and Dad's travel plans. We talked about the Sterling Foundation and the first cohort of entrepreneurs I'd funded. At the end of the night, Jackson pulled me aside and handed me a small, wrapped box. Inside was a simple silver bracelet with a tiny coffee cup charm. "So you never forget that you always had enough money for coffee, and that I was too blind to see what was right in front of me." I put the bracelet on. "Thank you, Jackson." "No, thank you. For not giving up on me, for teaching me the most important lesson of my life, and for being a better person than I deserved." After they left, I stood at the window with my evening coffee and looked out at the city that had given me everything. Not just wealth or success, but the chance to define those terms for myself. My phone buzzed with messages. Photos from the evening. Mom texted, "That was lovely. I'm so proud of you." I typed back a heart emoji and set the phone down. Success had a lot of definitions. It was the numbers in my portfolio, but also the relationships I'd rebuilt, the boundaries I'd established, the life I'd created on my own terms. It was knowing my worth even when no one else could see it. It was having the courage to walk away and the wisdom to give people a chance to change. And most importantly, it was learning that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, being true to yourself, and letting the truth speak for itself. I raised my coffee cup to the city, to my grandmother, to the younger version of me who'd sat at that table at the Capitol Grill and decided she was done being small. "Here's to the silent investors," I said out loud. "Here's to the people who do the work without needing the credit. Here's to proving them wrong, not with words, but with quiet, undeniable success." The city lights twinkled in response, and I smiled. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, I was writing it entirely on my own terms.